Well, hello everybody. I was going to say good morning, but you might be watching this and it might be midnight. I don't know. So whenever it is, hello. We're back to this. We're back to the lockdown lessons. And for the first lesson, what I thought we would do is just to reflect a little bit on the photographs that you've been taking so far. So in today's lesson, I, being you, aspire to develop my photographic practice through critical reflection. And that is not just being positive, that is looking for things that can be improved, being constructive in response to your own images. So, no chest beating about how great you are. And the success criteria is to sort of annotate your contact sheets. We're not going to be able to do that because they're not printed off. But I mainly want you to focus on the shortlists. So you should by now have shortlisted 6 images for a photo shoot. We need to be doing that for each photo shoot that you take. You're choosing 6 images, the best ones from it. And then it's creating a review of those photographs, citing successes, things that could be fixed, things that could be changed, and so forth. And I'm going to show you some examples and we can chat sort of through those. But basically, yeah, just pick one of your photo shoots and start annotating your images based on strengths and weaknesses. This table is really a good place to start because within this table, you kind of have simple sort of strengths and weaknesses. A weakness of this particular slide is that you can't see the word strength at the top. I've done that on purpose just to, I don't know. But anyway, so I've broken this down into 3 areas. You have composition, you have visual elements, and then finally you have the technical skill. So, this is a good sort of starting point for when you're starting to analyse your own photographs. You can use this as a kind of starting point. So, for composition, you've got things like strength, you've got rule of thirds, symmetrical balance. You could say, it's a minimal composition. It's not too cluttered. And the weaknesses, you've got the opposite of that. There's maybe no clear focal point, cluttered composition, and so forth. But these are examples. You can obviously add your own. Visual elements, they're really important. To have a range of visual elements within images, but also, when you look at a photograph, a lot of the time there may be a lack of contrast. I really feel that's the important word, contrast. And you can see there on the right hand side, in weaknesses for visual elements, you've got lack of tonal range. Dull, murky colours, for example. Again, I've not written too much here. This is just a kind of a template. And then you've got the technical skill. So you've established a focal point. You've managed to use the correct aperture. You've used a focal length which has been successful in showing what you wanted to show. You've managed to create an image with a shallow depth of field or an extended depth of field, so forth. And obviously there are other weaknesses outside which you can also write about: camera shake, wrong ISO, all that stuff. So looking at this piece of annotation, you can obviously see, first of all, you have the camera settings up the top, which is really, really strong. And also putting the keywords in bold is a really good idea, because straight away when you're looking at that piece of annotation, you're picking out some photographic terminology. Obviously slow, shutter speed, large aperture, foreground, background, obviously visual language within there. There's some compositional terms, framing and focal point, which is really, really strong. So this is a good idea when you're annotating your images. It's just to put those keywords in bold. Obviously you've got this photograph and then 2 quotation marks. I think the person's forgot to put the name of the photograph in there. But if you do name your photographs, it's quite nice. Just it's kind of, I don't know, adds an air of professionalism. I suppose, to the images. So that's something to think about. You know, could you name your images? But you can see that the language in this is really, really strong. And there's lots of reference to the image itself. I think what's also good about this annotation is that there is some reference to weaknesses. So you can see that, you know, a few images is slightly loudy due to the ISO being too high. A slower shutter speed was used to allow more time for light to enter the camera. And then you can see a large aperture was used to create distance between the foreground and background. Overall image is interesting. The contrasting colours of orange and pink and blue, with the branches framing the main focal point. Explanation is a little bit clouded, but still. The image could be improved by adjusting the levels to create more contrasting colours. So she's referring to editing there, which is good. So it's how it can be improved. But there's lots of, you know, engagement with the image there. There's understanding of photographic terminology. And what you can actually see within this annotation, I would say that this is actually a stronger annotation. So you can see that there was an improvement with the annotation as the photo went on. Again, you have the settings at the top. I think it's really good if you can have the settings. If you don't know them, we can check them when we get back to school. But you can see here, I'll just read through it. This photograph, Mystic Waters, is much more dramatic than the other photographs in the photo shoot. So this is obviously a favourable one. You do want to say why you've chosen that particular image. As most of the model's faces in darkness, mainly shadowing the eyes, adding to the dramatic atmosphere. A large aperture was used to let as much light in as possible, and a shutter speed of 100th of a second was used because if a slow shutter speed was used, there's a risk of the model moving over a prolonged time. So yeah, really, really good, really thorough. She's talking about ISO there and referring that to overexposure. So again, you know, a very, very strong annotation. It's very, very technical, but she's also referring to the dramatic atmosphere within the image. So it's strong from that point of view too. And you can see the detail, the engagement with this image. What's written here is, however, the shoulder closest to the camera is overexposed. This could be fixed in the editing process by adjusting the histogram to soften the whites within the photograph. So this is very, very good. You know, you can see a lot of understanding, but even with that last sentence, the pupil is writing, you know, about a very specific thing within the photograph, and that's a key part as well. You need to refer to the image. Don't just write in a general way. Refer to specific parts of the image with clarity, and you know, the vocabulary used here is very, very strong. And again, this annotation is very strong. The image Bottle of Waves was especially successful as it was exactly what I envisaged. That's a good sentence because we're talking about our expectations and our vision. Having the fairy lights reflect onto the water, creating highlights using a fast shutter speed made it easier to freeze the waves. The large aperture lets more light in, also taking the photograph at a low angle captured the world from a different angle, created a unique composition. So maybe some of the explanation there is not that strong, but again, you've got good language in there. However, the white balance was wrong, resulting in a blue cast. This mistake can be fixed using Photoshop color correction setting and adjusting the histogram to create brighter highlights and reduce the harsh shadows, creating a more pleasing photograph. However, during the photograph, the motion of the waves was lost. So again, it's just very highbrow. It's very, it's a pleasure to read. This is what I'm looking for. I really want to see that photographic terminology. So if you can do your best to try and annotate, I think at least 6 images would be possible. So if we can go for 6 from one photo shoot, 5 or 6 is fine if you've only got 5 within that shoot, but 6 would be ideal. And if you can, make sure that you have them, that'd be great. In the comments part underneath the assignment, if you can just let me know what photo shoot you you actually annotated, so that I know, and then I will give you feedback on that. I'm very much looking forward to your responses.